We are learning that a fifth boy
Yeah.
is being taken for treatment. He was removed from the cave not too long ago. I'd say within the last hour or so. They are expected to keep these boys here for about 4 or 5 days as they go through some medical checkups, get hydrated, and also make sure that they didn't pick up any sort of infections that could harm their health or harm the health of others.
You're looking at a live picture right outside the hospital there. We're going to keep an eye trained on that, but bring in David Sears on the telephone with us. He's a former U.S. Navy SEAL. He's going to talk us through some of the conditions that the rescue divers will face as they try to rescue the remaining members of this soccer team. And David, thanks so much for joining us. I know in talking to some of the other members of another Navy SEAL that we spoke to earlier, that on the best of days, under the best of conditions, cave diving is something that is inherently dangerous. All diving is inherently dangerous, but this is, multiply that by a factor of 10 times. Just talk us through some of the things that the rescue divers have to keep in mind, especially since they're bringing untrained children who, in some cases, don't even know how to swim from their location out to safety.
Right, Vlad. One of the issues you're going to have is it's just so cold, dark, and you have the unknown factor where you're not just taking care of yourself, you're taking care of another kid who's very inexperienced at this. So like the other Navy SEAL said was, it is very arduous under the best of circumstances with experience. Now you have also currents, you're worried about the waters rising. It's, for all the listeners or viewers, it's not just a flat walk. You're combining things. Caving combines things like rock climbing, and do it in the dark and in the cold and in the wet. So rock climbing in the rain in a very confined space with jagged pieces that can tear at a hose, tear at your suit, tear at your skin, your arms. That's why you always see them in helmets in there, right? Cave diving has a lot of bumps on the head. No helmet, and you got big problems.
And they're going to be underwater for several hours. I mean, how much oxygen do these tanks hold? What's it like? A short dive, if you're maybe down for an hour, I can understand. But several hours, that's got to have some serious impact on your body.
Yeah, absolutely, Anne-Marie. So you're going to have exhaustion, and you're going to have the cold's going to get to you. So that water around you all the time, even with the wetsuit on, is just going to suck your body heat away from you. And that starts to get you exhausted. Your muscles start to kind of cramp up. And so you have to fight through that all the time, and those kids are going to have to fight through that with the encouragement of these divers that are getting them out.
It's hard for us here in New York to understand the timing of the rescue, because we know that the first rescue operation took about 8 hours. But I'm curious, David, how long of that time, just in your estimation, would have been spent in the water? Because it sounds to me, when I see the report that says the rescue operation took 8 hours, I have no idea how long it would take to swim what appears to be almost 6 miles of caves. And I don't know if that entirety of the 6 miles is underwater. Apparently, there is a portion where the boys can walk out under optimal conditions when the waters have receded. But do you know how long they would actually be in the water?
Well, Vlad, from what I've seen is it's definitely not the entire time on air or using a tank to assist in your breathing. But they are going to be wet and immersed to some extent in the water, whether it's your feet or they're up to their waist wading through portions. That was the purpose of pumping out all the water, was to try and get them so that they did not have to be on oxygen the entire time or on compressed air, supplemental air the entire time. So there's large portions where they're able to be above the surface of the water, but they're still wet. And it takes a long time. Just think about how long it would take you to walk. I've heard different estimates. So let's go with 2.5, 3 miles through this cave system. Walking 3 miles at an average pace of 20 minutes over flat ground is an hour walking through easy conditions. Now, swim that same distance. Swimming 3 miles is going to take some of the best swimmers an hour and a half just to swim it in flat water. So now just keep multiplying those things out, and you can see how you easily get to that 6-8 hour time frame real fast.
So phase one of this operation took 11 hours. We've been talking about the challenge for the boys making their way through, but this would have been, for the rescuers, they would have had to make their way through this cave system and then basically turn around and go back?
Exactly. So, what I've heard is up to 90 divers and 40 or so Thai divers, supplemented by 50 international divers that are helping out. Now, I could have those numbers flip-flopping, but it's right around 90 divers or so. And they're going to do that. They're going to probably come out and rest. As they get one out, they'll have others going in. So they'll pass themselves, they'll pass each other in sections of the cave where they're able to do that. And they're going to try to constantly replenish those supplies that they need to get the kids out, extra tanks and things like that.
David, I'm curious. We know Navy SEALs, U.S. Navy SEALs, Thai Navy SEALs. You train. You are the best of the best, and you train for all conditions, land, air, and sea. But I'm curious how much training let's say, let's use your personal experience you've done, you've had with cave diving. What kind of training goes into that to learn to do that? Because it's not a common part of a U.S. Navy SEALs mission, although it is a component of it. I'm just curious how much training goes into that. And for example, you yourself, if you were tapped to be part of this rescue, what would you think about? What were some of the things you'd be thinking about as you prepare for it?
You would really be trying to get a hold of the cave divers who have been doing this for a long time. So you have the basics of diving that we know and our ability to keep calm, understand emergency procedures. We have basics of rock climbing down, which is going to come in handy in a cave. We're used to working in the night. We're used to working in the dark. So none of that in confined spaces. We're good with all that. But we would need some expertise from actual cave divers and saying, hey, what are the pitfalls? What are things that we haven't thought of that we don't know about? And they'll largely be, you would use those cave divers as your lead planners to make sure that you're doing everything right. You've thought of all the contingencies because you don't have that experience. So you would turn to them for that, and you would largely be helping them out. How can I facilitate this? We'd give up the lead to the experts.
I'm looking at the video and just how tight the spaces are, and I know that they're in some cases it's so tight that they just can't have the air canisters. They can't have them on their back because there's just not enough room, and just how jagged some of the edges are. We were talking earlier about the physical, the demands on your body, the physical pressures of having to swim against a current, having limited space. That really, we already know that Navy SEALs are athletes, but to undertake something like this, your athletic ability needs to be supreme.
Absolutely. And you really have to, as the leader of this team, you would have to really monitor the health of your own guys as well and make sure that they're not pushing past their limits. So those tanks that you're seeing, whether they're filled with something called nitrox, I saw some of those tanks that they likely use to first get in. That's a mixture of nitrogen and oxygen that allows you to stand there longer, or just compressed air. They look like they're about 80 cubic foot tanks, and they weigh about somewhere right around 40 pounds. So they've got that strapped on their back, and then they're trying to do this rock climbing with that on their back, as well as bring extras in. It's carrying a lot of things over these jagged rocks in the dark. So you're going to have to monitor your guys and force them rest when they need it so that they don't make mistakes.
I'm sure this will go down in history as one of the great rescue operations in the last 50 years or so. David Sears, former U.S. Navy SEAL, thank you so much for talking us through it. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys. Have a good morning.
You too.